Today I'm going to do an engine oil and filter change and talk through a multi-point inspection on my 2013 Mustang GT Premium with a 5-liter engine. I'm going to show you a few things specific to my Mustang, but generally this information is good for all 5th generation 2005 through 2014 Mustangs with either the V8, 4.6, 5, 5.4 or 5.8 liter, or V6, 4-liter or 3.7-liter engines, as well as all cars or light trucks for that matter. This video goes in depth into the engine oil and filter change and describes the checks, cleaning, and lubrication that should occur at the time of the oil change. The engine oil change triggers the other periodic maintenance. Again, I use a track package Mustang, but the techniques used here will work on most cars and light trucks. This video is for the new home mechanic and includes tips that may be used by any car guy. By car guy, I mean the automotive enthusiast. This video is an introduction and acts as the table of contents for my oil change and multi-point inspection checks series. You will see this as we go through the inspection list. More than an oil change? Yes, we're talking about a car we love and we want to take care of it. We want to maintain it in a way that it will last forever. To complete an engine oil and filter change, you only need to drain the engine oil, change the oil filter, and refill the crankcase with engine oil. I'm going to show you how to do this. However, the engine oil change is a periodic maintenance, 3,000 to 5,000 miles for conventional oils, 5,000 miles to 10,000 miles for synthetic oils, or whenever the car tells you to. This should trigger other maintenance and vehicle wear parts inspection. Although I stated earlier that the information included here can be used for any car, I'm talking about Mustangs, and I'm talking about Mustang lovers, cars that will be on the street 50 to 100 years from now, and car enthusiasts that want to put extra care into their cars. We enjoy these cars and we want to take care of them. You can do the checks and maintenance outlined here on Grandma's Grocery Getter, but you'll want to adjust the frequency that you do them. So what maintenance items? Part of the answer is in your vehicle's owner's manual, and the rest of it is contained in this video. What wear parts should we inspect? We'll cover that in this inspection checklist in detail, and I'll point out where I have a video on that inspection step. So I have detailed videos that show you how to do a lot of these inspection steps. Before we get started with the multi-point inspection, let's get the oil to draining so it has a long period of time where it can drain. Before I do the engine oil change, I like to check the engine oil. The level of the oil tells you something of the state of the oil, whether it's leaking or it's consuming oil, and then the color of the oil tells you, of course, how used it is. Obviously this is used motor oil. My computer is telling me to change it, but the car's been sitting all winter, so that might be a factor too in how the computer's telling me I need to change it. But it is dirty oil. It's not milky, and it's not clear, so it doesn't have any gas or water in it, and it needs to be changed. The guys at the parts store will help you select the right filter, or you can look it up online. I like to use either Mobile One, K&N, or Wix. Wix has the best paper, but the guys at the parts store will help you find the right filter for your car. There are a number of different oil filter wrenches. I like to use this style of wrench the best. It allows for an extension, so you can use different lengths of extension to get up in there and take the filter off. But sometimes it's helpful to have one specific for your filter. This one's for my ZX10R Kawasaki filter, It also works on a number of other smaller automotive filters. And then sometimes you just can't get it any other way. You have to use just one of the belt filter wrenches. For the 5 liter, this medium size wrench works the best. I'm going to get the oil to drain. It's a 15 millimeter head size drain plug. On the oil pan. Now some people say to warm up the engine so that the oil flows easier. Some people say to do it cold. You don't want to do it hot, otherwise you could burn yourself. The oil will still be hot. Now, I like to park the car, put it on jack stands the night before. Now the oil's cold, but it's already had all night to drain back to the pan. I think there's an advantage to that. And I like to let my oil sit, let it drip as long as it'd like to drip. I go off and do some other task, like for instance do my multi-point inspection on the rest of the car and do the service on the rest of the car, like the battery and the other stuff that I'm going to talk about in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and just let that drain. As part of your oil change, you're already going to remove this engine access underneath the car. There's 3 8mm head size bolts that you have to remove. And my cover even says that it's torqued to 9 Newton meters. So when you put those bolts back in, and it has an arrow that points to it, each of those bolts, which is kind of convenient. Here's the right side of the car. I'm going to take those off. While my engine oil is still dripping, I'm going to use a second pan to take my oil filter off. The engine oil filter is located the left side of the engine in front of the rack. It shouldn't come off real hard. Remember, this tool is strictly for taking the filter off, not putting it back on. Put it back on by hand. You just screw it off with your hand. It's going to make a little bit of a mess. Try to get it off and set it up as soon as possible. And then also just let that drip too. And here's the advantage of doing it cold. You know, the oil pressure is gone out of my car because the engine's cold. If you just ran it to warm up the oil, there'd be a significant amount of more oil coming out of the threads of the oil filter. Before we get started on the inspection list, here's a list of things you should do the night prior to prepare for your oil change and prepare for the multi-point inspection. You want to clean the engine prior to and at least the night before so it has time to dry. You don't want to work on a wet engine, but you also don't want to work on a dirty engine. Here's some reasons why you want to work on a clean engine. And then probably a disadvantage may be that you're going to wash away the coolant, so it'd be hard to determine a coolant leak. But it'll be easier to work on a clean engine, and you can see the fluid levels easier on a clean engine. You'll be able to see problems with belts and hoses easier on a clean engine. Number 2, ensure you have everything you need for the oil and filter change. Ensure you have additional fluids. Ensure you have spare parts. If you know a component is marginal and you're going to replace it on the day that you're doing your maintenance, then make sure you have that on hand before the night before. Ensure you have all the tools and shop equipment laid out the night before so you're ready to go. Let's move on to the inspection. I've broken down this inspection into different areas. So we're going to look at under the hood, under the vehicle, the suspension, and then general vehicle are the areas that I've broken this inspection list down into. So checklist number 1, under the hood. You want to start your inspection under the hood so that if you find anything, you'll quickly be able to replace it. Generally, anything under the hood you want to correct right away. So inspect the engine for engine problems by looking at the used engine oil before you change it. So pull the dipstick out and take a look at the engine oil. This will tell you something of the engine state, whether the engine is using oil or leaking, or if you have fuel in the oil or coolant in the oil. So make sure you pull the dipstick prior to draining the engine oil. Number 2, inspect all fluids, the transmission fluid, power steering fluid, brake fluid, coolant, windshield washer fluids. Notice the V that's on the front of this bullet. That indicates that I have a video that goes into detail on this step. Before I move on, let me comment on transmission fluid. On my Mustang, I have a manual transmission. It can't be checked under the hood. You have to check it under the car. And on the 2013 Mustang with an automatic transmission fluid can't be checked under the hood either. It also needs to be checked under the car. But I mention it here for the older Mustangs. Do these next 3 together and do it as an assembly, and do the rest of the inspection as you have this apart. So this will make more sense in a second here. So clean your air filter and your cold air duct. These all go together with your cold air tube. So inspect the engine air filter, clean the air inlet box, change or clean the filter as necessary, and I show you how to clean a K&N air filter on mine, and then clean the air box. Clean the mass airflow sensor. I should have a video that shows you how to do that. Clean the throttle body. So once you have those apart, you'll have better access to the top and front of the engine, so you'll be able to see if you have leaks, or you'll be able to see your belts and hoses much easier on the front of the engine. Next, inspect the accessories drive belt, idler and tensioner pulleys on the front of the engine. Inspect all hoses, upper and lower radiator hoses, heater core hoses, vacuum hoses, power steering hoses if equipped. Remember my car, my 2013, has electrically assisted steering, so I don't have power steering or power steering hoses. AC lines and fuel lines. Inspect all underhood wiring harnesses for abrasion and damage, and then re-electrical tape them as necessary to keep them functioning properly. Make sure the tape isn't coming off or you don't have abrasion on your electrical tape. Continuing under the hood, inspect the battery cables, clean battery terminal ends and battery tray. Again, there's a V on the front of this one, so I have a detailed video showing how to do that. Inspect air conditioner system freon levels. Again, a video to show that. Inspect engine compartment for loose components or engine accessories. Moving on under the vehicle, inspect for leaks, engine, transmission, differential, and fuel system. Check engine all over with attention to the front harmonic balancer and back at the bell housing areas. Check the transmission all over with attention to the rear output shaft seal at the drive shaft yoke. Inspect the differential with attention to the pinion seal, the diff cover seal, and wheel bearing seals. Inspect the manual transmission fluid level. Again, I have a video that shows that. Inspect the differential gear lube level. Again, a video that shows that in detail. Inspect exhaust system and the heat shields. Over time, as your car ages, heat shields can come loose and cause vibration and annoying noises. So make sure you inspect those. Inspect the drive shaft U-joints and hanger bearings. Inspect fuel lines, hoses, and from the fuel tank to the engine. Pay particular attention to the mounting locations and hangers. You don't want the hoses to abrade over time and potentially cause a leak. Look for damage and abrasion caused by that movement. Checklist 3, suspension. Rotate the tires and check tire pressure. Inspect tires for tread wear depth and uneven wear. Be sure to include the spare tire if equipped. My car with the track package doesn't have a spare tire. It has an inflator. If you do have a spare tire, make sure you check the tire pressure in your spare tire in case you ever need it. You want to make sure that you have a sound spare tire and that it operates properly. Inspect the brake pads for wear. Estimate remaining service life of your brake pads. Check for uneven wear and evidence of sticky caliper or other problems. Inspect the brake calipers, hoses, and lines for leaks and damage. Inspect the parking brake cables for abrasion and damage. Our generation of Mustang, the 5th generation of Mustang, is known for parking brake cables that abrade near the axle tubes. Inspect suspension and steering components, driveline components for wear and looseness. Lube suspension components if required. Many new cars, including our Mustangs, do not require periodic lube and have no grease fittings, but many aftermarket parts do. I like to use Moog suspension components and steering components, and often they include a grease fitting, so they require grease periodically, which will prolong their life. So make sure you grease suspension components if that is required. Inspection checklist 4, general vehicle. Check operation of the lights. If you're a car enthusiast, you probably know if all of your exterior lights are working. You check them as you operate the vehicle. But what about your brake lights? Unless you back into a dark garage and can see the glow of your brake lights, you probably don't know your brake lights are okay. I've noticed many people on the interstate with just one of the 3 brake lights working. Get a buddy to depress the brake pedal and quickly check your brake lights. This is a deliberate inspection of all of your lights to ensure that all of them are operating properly. Oil door, hood, and trunk hinges and latches. This will keep them operating properly for years. Clean the fuel filler door, seal, and neck. I have a video that shows what I mean here. If you don't do this cleaning, it could lead to an EGR or other engine-related fault code from your Mustang's computer. This is an easy cleaning to ensure no problem as your vehicle ages. This is for all of the capless filler neck equipped cars and light trucks. Check your owner's manual for required periodic maintenance. This is an example from my 2013 Mustang manual. Replace spark plugs every 100,000 miles, engine coolant every 100,000 miles, change the transmission fluid, both automatic and manual, every 150,000 miles, replace the accessory drive belt every 150,000 miles, and what wasn't included in the manual was to change the fuel filter. I recommend that you change that every 150,000 miles. Now these intervals may change due to environment, so keep that in mind. If you're operating your vehicle in a dirty or dusty environment, or you're towing with your vehicle, or excessive idling, then the interval may need to change. So again, look at the V in front of the bullet on these slides. Look for a video on the Stiles Automotive channel. If you don't see a V in the front of one of these items, let me know in the comments and I'll create a new video. But I'm creating new videos every week, so if you want to see something, let me know and I'll attempt to make it. At some point after you've got your engine started to drain and your oil filter off of the car, go ahead and take your filter out and turn it upside down. And then I add a little bit of oil into the filter. It's okay to spill a little bit on the outside up on the filter valve here, because I want to use a little bit of that oil. So I fill it all the way up and just let it set, and then it'll soak its way into the filter media. But take your finger and get some of that fresh oil that's along the valve here and put it up on the seal. That'll make it so it goes on good and tight. Make sure you got a good seal when you put it back on. And then just leave it sit like that for a while and it'll soak up that oil. That way when you start your engine up, your filter's not going to be completely dry of oil that your engine's going to have to fill it up with oil before it lubricates itself. On Mustangs, the oil filter screws in sideways, so you don't want to fill it completely full of oil. Some of it will drip out. So you just fill it up once and let it soak. On older Fords, you can fill it all the way full, let it soak, and then fill it again if your filter is going on vertically. You want as much oil in the filter as possible, but you don't want to create a mess. Since we're here talking in front of the engine, let's talk about a couple of products. You can use this kind of a product. Seafoam has a motor treatment used either in the fuel to clean the injectors, or you can use it in the crankcase. It says it helps quiet noisy lifters and cleans deposits. Or you can use the Marvel's Mystery Oil, does the same thing. You can use it as a fuel treatment or in the engine crankcase. I haven't really used it as a fuel treatment. I don't know how that works, but I have used it in the crankcase on older engines, and I do believe it works. It acts as a detergent to break up those carbon deposits that are inside the engine. I wouldn't use it on a newer engine like this 5-liter or an engine that you change the oil regularly. You don't need to use these kind of products. Another product is something like this motor flush. This you add to the oil just before you change it, and the bottle says that you run the engine for about 5 minutes with the engine warm to circulate this through the engine, and that helps clean out the old oil and the deposits. The only time I'd use this again is on an older engine that I know that the oil hasn't been changed regularly and the oil is extremely dirty. So I'm adding another quart to help that oil get flushed out, and I'm making it so that oil has a lower viscosity, so it flows out easier. But like I said with the other products, on a newer engine, I don't believe you need to use any of these. Make sure you use a good synthetic motor oil and change it regularly, and you won't have a problem. My filter sucked up all of the engine oil, so I'm going to add a little bit more to mine. I'm not going to fill it completely full, but I'm going to add a little bit more engine oil to it so we can see if it'll soak up some more. Okay, now that the filter is sat for a little bit of time with the oil in it, you can see that there's still a little bit of oil that the filter hasn't sucked up. And that's what I want. I want a little bit of oil. I don't want to make a mess with it, but I want it to have plenty of oil in it. Yeah, I'm not in a hurry to replace my oil filter, but when the adapter to the engine oil filter, or in my case, the oil cooler adapter, has stopped dripping, I'm going to take a clean paper towel and wipe off that interface. As you install the new filter, make sure you line the threads up square. You can always turn it backwards just a little bit to get it lined up. On this particular car, the access is pretty easy because it sticks down so far. Some you have to reach quite a bit to get to them, but you don't need a wrench. If you're wearing a mechanic's glove, you should be able to get a good enough grip on it and tighten it up with just your hand. So we're going to wipe it down good. We're going to make sure that when we start up the car, we check it right away. Make sure it's not leaking. Make sure it's not gushing oil. If it's gushing oil, we need to shut the engine off, of course, and figure out what's going on. Maybe the seal came off or got cocked or something. I've never actually had that problem ever happen, but you could always go back and retighten it. So just hand tight like that is good enough, but always make sure that you check it. In my case today, I've let my oil drain for so long doing my multi-point inspection that you can see that it forms a drop. There, it just dropped. It forms a drop but barely drips. So I'm going to wipe that off. Wipe off around the hole. I've already wiped off my drain plug. So I'm ready to reinsert it. Now some drain plugs on foreign cars recommend that you replace this washer. This has got like a rubber washer that's reusable on this Mustang drain plug. So I suppose if it becomes older and brittle, it'll need to be replaced. But generally, I don't replace it. Just snug it up. Don't need to over tighten it. Again, 15mm wrench or socket on that. And then I'm gonna wipe it off one more time. Make sure it's not damp around it so I can see that if it does leak, I can easily see. And I'll check it again once I've added engine oil and started the car. Make sure it hasn't leaked. Now that I have my engine oil filter back on and my drain plug back in, I can select one of my two favorite funnels, whichever works the best, and add engine oil to my crankcase. This 5-liter needs 8 quarts, so I'm going to add 8 quarts and then make sure I check the oil. So I'm going to run the engine, have it be warm, run for about 5 minutes while I check the oil. Make sure I'm on the right near the full line. So in my shop tip series, I talk about what to do with this oil container. I tip these up and drain them into a leftover mix. Once I've drained all the oil out of them doing the oil change, I take that leftover mix and I use it for lubing hinges and lock cylinders and whatever you need a good engine oil for, even if it doesn't really need to be a synthetic oil. It's just a mix, so it doesn't cost me anything to do that. And I always have a little bit of oil for my oil can. But I like to set this up and let it drain. This particular setup doesn't let me drain very well here because of the valve cover is at such an angle. I guess I could make a custom filter just for the 5-liter. If I cut it off here, then it would set up a little bit better. But what I like to do is just set it up and let it drain on its own. I don't want to overfill it. I'm going to set my container down on a flat surface, checking, because it's a five quart container, and I'm trying to take it down to the 2 quart line. I'm just about there, a little bit more. I don't need to overfill it. I'm gonna go back and check the engine oil anyway. I can add some more later. So now I'm right there at the fill line. So I'm gonna cap my 2 quarts instead of let my funnel drain. That back. I'm ready to start the car up, and then once I start it, I want to check both the engine oil filter and the drain plug to make sure they're not leaking. Once I started the car, I'm going to immediately get underneath and check and make sure my drain plug and my filter aren't leaking. And if I can't see it, I'm going to physically check with my hand and make sure that it's dry. In this case, in my Mustang, my 5-liter, I could see if it's leaking. You'd be able to see it right here. But on some cars you can't tell, so you need to check, make sure you check it with either a clean paper towel or your hand, and then check the drain plug, make sure it's not leaking. But immediately after startup, make sure you're checking the oil filter. So I'm going to let it run about 5 minutes so it warms up, and then I'm going to shut it off and wait about 2 minutes and check the oil. Since I know my filter isn't leaking, I can go ahead and put this access cover on while I'm waiting for the engine to warm up. Make sure that you pour your used oil into a suitable container so that you can take it to the recycler. Most automotive parts stores that sell engine oil will take used engine oil and they recycle it. I'm using a 5-gallon fuel can that I've always used just for this purpose. You don't use it for anything else. I don't ever put fuel in it. But it gives me 5-gallon capacity to take back to the parts store. So I don't know if you can see that. My engine oil is right there where the tip of my thumb nail is. So I'm still down about half a quart, maybe a little more. So I'm going to add so there I am, right on the full mark, so I'm happy with that. After oil change cleanup. Like I said earlier, like I showed you in the video, pour your used engine oil into a suitable container to carry to the recycler. The best way to dispose of engine oil is to recycle it. Many service stations and quick lube places will accept the used engine oil, and where you buy your engine oil will accept used engine oil. For example, AutoZone or Pep Boys will take it back. Then make sure you reset your oil life in your Mustang computer and record your maintenance actions into your car maintenance logbook. So here I show you in detail the details of a maintenance logbook and how important it is in a video. Like I said in the beginning of this video acts like a table of contents for these detailed videos. Make sure you check out the complete list of videos in my playlist for 2005 through 2014 Mustangs that's on my channel. Now that concludes the video. If you found it helpful, let me know in the comments, and if you did, please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up.